Welcome back to the first coding challenge of the arrays section. And in this one, Julia and Kate are doing a study on dogs. So each of them asked 5 dog owners about their dog's age, and then they stored that data into an array. And that's one array for each of them. All right? And in this study, they are interested in knowing whether each of the dogs is an adult or a puppy. And the rule is that a dog is an adult if it is at least 3 years old, and it's a puppy if it's less than 3 years old. And by the way, the test data here, so the arrays for each is down here, so test data 1 and 2. All right. So your task is to create a function called checkDogs, which accepts these 2 arrays and does the following things. So first, Julia found out that the owners of the first and the last 2 dogs do actually have cats and not dogs. So here, what I want you to do is to create a shallow copy of Julia's array and then remove the cat ages from the copied array. And you should copy it because it's a bad practice to mutate the parameters or the arguments of a function. Then, second, create an array with both Julia's and Kate's data. So for Julia, of course, the corrected data. And then for each of the dogs, simply log to the console whether it is an adult with a string like this or a puppy and then with a string like this. And that's, of course, according to the rules in the beginning. And then just run this function for both test data sets. And that's it. So all you need to do is to use the tools from all the lectures in this section so far, and then I think you will be fine solving this on your own. So this is really all about using the tools that we already learned before, and there's not a lot of new thinking to do here. So I hope you managed to do this one, and I see you back here in a second. All right. So hopefully you did this just fine without any problems. But I will anyway write my solution here and explain what I am doing. So we accept the dogs from Julia and the dogs from Kate. And we will call this with the test data. And so Julia's data is this. And there's not a need to store them in separate variables. I will just call the function like this. All right. And now we should create a shallow copy of dogs Julia so that we can then remove some elements from there. So dogs Julia corrected dot slice. And so I'm using here the method and not the spread operator. And now I will simply remove some elements from there. So dogs Julia corrected dot splice. And so it tells us that the first and the last 2 dogs are not valid, basically. So the first is element number 0, and then we want to remove 1. So that's the first part. And then dogs Julia corrected dot splice, and then the last 2, which is -2. Okay. So let's take a look here simply at dogs Julia corrected just to see if this is correct, actually. So we need the console now. And so this was our beginning data. And indeed, the first and the last 2 are gone here. All right. Now, of course, you could have also done this in a different way, which is to simply copy the correct data from the original using the slice method. So something like this. Dogs Julia dot slice. So starting from the second one and then all the way to the third one. Okay, and so this would give us the exact same result, but in this case, I just wanted to use the splice method. And in fact, I wanted you to use the splice method as well, and that's why I gave you that task like that. Anyway, we don't need this here anymore. Let's now simply create a new variable with both these dogs. So simply calling it dogs. And again, we could use the spread operator here, which I actually prefer. But since we are in the arrays section here, let's do everything with array methods. So that's the concat method, remember. And then we want to join the corrected Julia docs with docs Kate. So always a good idea to check. And yeah, that's correct. All right. And so all we have to do now is basically create this string. Let me just copy this string. And so looping over this array is now an easy task, hopefully. So dogs.forEach, then the callback function, and one more time, we need actually the current element and also the index. And that's because here is the number, so dog number 1, and it's going to go all the way to 7. And so let's check out our rule. So a dog is an adult if he is at least 3 years old. So if dog is greater equal 3, then log a string like this. So here is the index plus 1. Here goes the dog itself. And then else is still a puppy. And here we need just this. And I think with this we are good. Let's just remove this. And yes, dog number 1 is 5 years old, so it's still an adult. Number 2 is 2 years old, so still a puppy. This is again a puppy with 1 year old. And so, yeah, that's the correct solution. Now let's just do it for this test data here. Then I'm gonna duplicate this one. Let's just comment out the first one. And okay, here we only have one puppy, which is the one before the last. And so this one is correct as well. And so, challenge completed.